Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Vinny Lospinuso Makes the Hall of Fame Case for ... And I'm pretty excited about this because he's going right to my home country, to my, I don't know, I want to say my birthright because that's not quite accurate, but basically something that is near and dear to every Canadian. It's hockey. And you're going to be talking about somebody who, when I was a kid, because I'm significantly older than my good friend here, Vinny, this name was never discussed. Actually, this whole league I didn't even know about until about 10 years ago. So,
yep, that's correct.
Yeah, so why don't you tell everyone who we're talking about today?
Well, I'm going to go with someone who, despite the fact he may not have an article on Wikipedia, it has not stopped me from doing a case of someone before, C. Wilfred Winkenbach. But I want to talk about one of the co-founders and the head of the Colored Hockey League, James Alexander Ross Kinney, better known as James A.R. Kinney.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting part of Canadian history, or really just history in general. The Underground Railroad, a lot of Black people were, as they were escaping the slavery of the South, migrated to Canada, or what would become Canada, because Canada didn't become a country until 1867. But a lot of them came to the Maritimes. So there is a significant, a lot of people don't know this. Actually, that's where the Rocks father is from. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah. Also, if I recall, that's also where William Ree's family is from. They were slaves that were around in America, and they fled to Canada to escape slavery, which good, slavery bad.
Well, I don't think you're making a really bold position on that one, but yes, I think we all agree on that. But a lot of them traveled to Nova Scotia, and this is sort of where the Colored Hockey League that you're going to be discussing originated. And I was shocked to learn that its roots were 1895. Oh my God!
Yep.
So as hockey is developing in the country of Canada, in different places throughout, through the West, through the prairies, through Ontario, through Quebec. This is almost happening simultaneously.
Yep, that's correct. During the late 1800s, like I said, a lot of the African Canadians, got to use that, so I'm so used to African Americans,
right,
often played hockey, but it was mostly on ponds. Don't forget, a lot of those more ice skating rinks, they couldn't play recreationally even because, well, they're Black.
Well, there also weren't to that point though. There were a lot of people just playing on ponds, period, because that was where you would do that. There was not a lot of rec centers, period.
Right, and the ones that did exist, they were not allowed into.
Yeah, so I mean, like, and I sort of got a different taste of that living out in the Rockies, where there was a lot of pond hockey going on that you wouldn't sort of expect, sort of see happen, but that was basically where a lot of people would play. A lot of people. That's why they have the Heritage Classics. So sort of like give to honor where hockey's roots, which was on the ponds, on the lakes, on the rivers of Canada and northern United States. There's a reason why there was a lot of the great American players in the early days were from Minnesota.
Yeah, but we talk about the league, but we need to talk about the man himself.
Yeah, please, let's do that.
Yeah, because now, granted, to be fair, because he doesn't have his own article, you gotta dig deep a little bit more for him. But he was a very, very, very significant man in terms of what he did. He grew up in Nova Scotia, of course, and throughout his life, he was a publicist. He was also a stenographer, so he was very big into journalism. He was also the superintendent of an orphanage in that area, too. So this is someone who, throughout his life, wanted to make it better for children that didn't have it as good as others. In
Mhm.
fact, in particular, the way that he did this would be trying to make his church, the African Baptist Church in the area, his goal to find a way to make it better for all Black Nova Scotians. Mhm.
So did he play hockey himself, or was this just an idea that he came up with?
He played some hockey but in 1895 he was with three other Baptist leaders: James Borden, James Robinson Johnston, and Henry Sylvester Williams. Yes, the three Jameses and Henry. I'll call them.
Sure.
And these people were community leaders. They were lawyers. They were activists as well, because Kinney was also very much an activist. He wanted Black Canadians to be seen equally as their white counterparts, and he wanted to find ways to make it better for uh, Black Canadians.
Also, too, I was reading that it also helped sort of drive church membership.
Yes, it was. It was done to draw church membership because, of course, in many ways, they're lawyers, but they're also ministers. They're also, in many ways, businessmen too. This, in many ways, would be a very symbiotic relationship. It would
Mhm.
better the force for equality of Black Canadians. A lot of Black nationalism is very rooted into that. And for them, hey, it gets more people coming to our church. It gets more people talking about this orphanage I'm a part of, also my law practice. It works. It works. Everything works out.
I think also too, a gentleman that you've introduced me to, that you're working with in the National Sports Museum,
Mhm.
that sort of ties in with that,
Yes.
and his vision. And I don't want to speak out of turn because it's obviously his vision, and I'm going to have him on the show at some point in
Yeah,
time.
he's
But
great.
yeah, it is to basically talk about the how sports unifies and just what it does to sort of grow people. And this is sort of a great thing for this. Uh, I don't. That may not fit because I think he's just doing that. Is he doing that for the United States or just all?
It's the U.S., but he's gonna have a few things sprinkle from Canada and other countries, because even though it's American centric, it's America is also a melting pot of other countries too. So you
Right.
got to also include a little bit of that within it, because sometimes it's a much of the people's identities. In the same way that people view themselves with their identity in the same way they do for, like, um, with skin color or sexuality or even other aspects. The country that you're also from, I should know because there's too many people waving American flags all around this country. It's a big part of their identity. And in
Mhm.
that way too, that could help us as well, trying to shape the
Sure.
picture of how these people are.
Well, and in Canada, hockey is pretty much woven into our fabric, and it's sort of great that he's basically doing that in the same way. Although, again, it's still sort of sad that there was the need to sort of come up with a separate league. But that's a sad part of our history. How big did this league get? Because I read that this stayed until 1930, and I think there was was it up to 6 teams? I might be mistaken here. I know it extended out into Prince Edward Island.
Um, I think there was at least six teams.
Okay.
There was at least six teams, but it was very, very popular in Halifax. It really was
Oh yeah,
popular.
yeah.
Um, no, right. There was I had this. It's seven teams in Nova Scotia and one in Prince Edward Island. So you had eight different teams, and
Okay.
you could tell just how, and you could also tell just from where this is that a lot of the focus is in Nova Scotia with it. Like, again, this
Well,
is
it
very,
would be.
very, historic.
It would be, yeah. Nova Scotia was where, again, there was a significant Afro-Canadian population that did exist in Canada at the time.
Sorry, made a mistake. It's 8 different cities with 12 teams in total.
Oh, 12 teams in total. Oh, wow. Okay.
12 team total. My text that I wrote on my doc sheet.
Well, no, good. What I found fascinating, and I guess Kinney may not have had a whole lot to do with it, but it happened under his watch, so it still counts.
He was the president. He was
Right.
their head
So
guy.
when I was doing my research, and I was amazed to find that the first recorded, or at least what we believe to be the first recorded slap shot, originated in this league.
Yes. Yeah, like because of his innovation, which his idea of education came from the Tuskegee model in Alabama, actually. That's like that's true. Like
Okay.
because he was an educator himself for many of these young people, he used that model for it. And the same idea that Kinney would have, you could argue the CHL did that also.
Mhm.
I mean, the butterfly stance.
Well, yes. Sorry,
That's pretty big.
No, I get excited about that because like it's one of those shocking things to learn that the butterfly stance, and for those who are pretty much unaware of what that is, basically it's just the way it sounds. Where the goaltender is executing that type of style. Patrick Waugh was the master of it, but at one point in time in the NHL, it was actually illegal to actually bend down for the goalie or for organized hockey. And as if you're gonna like it, bring up the offense, obviously you got to do something about the defense. And it just makes perfect sense. I mean, like I don't know, I can't imagine that at one point in time that you couldn't go on your knees as a goalie. But
yeah, it just feels weird. But
oh yeah, but
again,
this
that
league was all
Tuskegee.
about the excitement, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, over 400 players played throughout these teams. So like
Okay, that many
yeah,
did
a lot. Mm-hmm.
now. Obviously, none of them made the NHL, and I don't know if any of them would have ever been good enough because prior to, like, in a certain point, you could actually challenge for the Stanley Cup. Uh,
They wouldn't have because it was
well,
more
no,
specific.
of course, but I what we don't know is the quality of the players. Having said that, the idea, and I think it's something that a lot of historians and sports historians should know, this league did exist. Uh, I think the question that sometimes gets bandied about, and I don't actually know the answer to this. When Willie O'Ree broke the color barrier in the NHL, I don't know if there was if there was how do I want to say this?
You could say, "Don't worry, I won't judge
Well,
you."
no, I'm trying to word this properly. If there was sort of like a bear, like a barring at that point, or whether there just wasn't anyone necessarily good enough. Because bluntly, there wasn't that many black hockey players at the time. Whereas we know in baseball and football and in basketball there was.
I'd probably say there was some, but many of them didn't have access to it.
Maybe unspoken. Well, yeah, and I think that's sort of the other thing. When you say access, I think also too, it's also resources.
Yeah, of course. Like,
Which is a big thing. I mean, like if you're a soccer player, you can pretty much play anywhere. If
yeah, like I mean, when
basketball, there's courts everywhere. If you are poor in Canadian or American for that matter, okay, let's say you've got access to the ice. That's great, but back then there wasn't a whole lot of equipment.
no,
Heaven forbid, like it's I just saw my nephew and niece, and my nephew, he's 5 years old. He's playing hockey, right? He's a stout kid. He's who knows what he's going to play at this point, right? But
oh, nice. I didn't know he had nieces and nephews.
yeah, well, I guess it never came up. Yeah, on my wife's
Yeah, I know the Hans doesn't have any kids.
yeah,
That's why
Hans
I
doesn't
asked.
have any kids. Yeah, but well, I've got like well, two nieces, one nephew, but two in Canada. So he's just started playing hockey. He's like 5 years old, and there he's good. Like his dad, my brother-in-law, they're going to encourage them in that. But I mean, like if you're going into hockey pretty much after the 60s when equipment just exploded, right? So
Mhm.
now you're just spending not it's not just the time, it's the money on the equipment. And that sort of priced a lot of lower income Canadians uh, out. So like that's sort of why you didn't see as many First Nations great hockey players as maybe you could have had they had the resources, or Black
Definitely.
Canadians. I mean, like right now, I don't know if this is right or not. I looked this up last year, and I think I counted like 3 South Asian Canadian hockey players in the NHL.
Yeah, it's there's not hockey itself has always had the reputation as a very white man's game, but it wasn't like that in
It is,
Halifax. But back then, even
yeah.
though yeah, it was seen as that way, the black team actually had more spectators to their games, at least
I
15.
read that because it was
Yeah,
probably
like
more entertaining.
yeah, they found it more entertaining. It's
Hmm.
because I mean, granted, there is a cynical part of me that might make it feel like, oh, they went because it's interesting to see it. But they were actually really, really exciting to watch. Like it's like
Now, here's the question that I want to go here with that. We've seen Willie O'Ree inducted as a builder, and
Herb Carnegie just made it.
yes, thank you. Uh, so, is it this much of a stretch for Kinney to come in next? I would say
Uh,
no.
no, it's not a stretch. I mean the issue is like for Kinney, at least with Willie O'Ree and Herb Carnegie, they were a lot. They have been, especially in the case of Willie, as he's still alive,
Yeah, Willie's still alive. Yeah.
in the relatively modern era. They've been alive in the 2010s. Kinney died decades and decades ago. And again, there's not as much information on people like him. And unfortunately, similar to these other sports, they they don't have many people that are willing to go back in time and really dig through everything to find some
Hmm.
candidates, which is why I come in. But you know,
Right.
Kinney is so deserving. Like again,
Were
he
were you able to find if there's any lineage that he still has?
I couldn't really look at that.
Okay.
Um, but Kinney was, even though he was one of the founders, he was, for all intents and purposes, the head of that entire league. Like that was his league that he ran.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's his baby. That
Yeah.
that that that's what he did. I mean,
Yeah.
he
Absolutely.
like he the CHL for its impact on hockey, especially with historians and hockey historians and other people mention that. Like, if it's as important as they say, they need to have someone from there. And if they're going to do anyone, it has to be James A.R. Kinney. I mean, I would be
Was
fine with anyone else, but Kinney by far is the strongest case.
was there any like set star there that maybe would take his place?
Ugh, to be
Well,
honest, I haven't really looked as much
okay.
into that because
Okay.
most of
No,
my
no, fair
attention
enough.
has been on Kinney, and most of the stuff I've read has said Kinney, 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 Kinney.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
So,
Is Kinney in any Hall of Fame now?
not that I don't
None.
know.
So
I don't think
like
he's in any. He's on Canada's Hall of Fame. I'm not even sure if he's in the Nova Scotia Hall of Fame. If there is, I don't know if there is one.
all right. Well,
He
that's
should
going
be
to be
in
our
there.
mission. We're going to look at that after.
Definitely.
Yeah. So,
Uh,
so we'll look at that. Okay, this has been great. There's a lot of other shows here that we do here in the Bucknerverse. The weekly show that I do with Evan Nolan, where we look at Hall of Fame related news. We've been doing a lot more live shows. That's going to be happening a lot more. Last one we did was where we made our Pro Football Hall of Fame semifinalists. And Vinny, I'm going to tell you right now, we're deciding. Actually, we decided this last night, and you're going to obviously be a part of that. On the 29th, we're going to be doing our finalists also.
yay.
So Vinny's going to be a part of that. So if you like what Vinny does, I like what Vinny does. That's why he's a regular on here in the Bucknerverse, and he's been doing a lot of work behind the scenes that has made not Hall of Fame a lot better. And I just want to thank you publicly for that.
No problem. I'm gonna get you up some more interviews down the
Yeah,
pipeline. Yeah, there's a few
that
good
that one
ones.
that one is just that one is locked up. So that's happening tomorrow. I just spoke with him.
No, he's great. He's great.
So I'm looking forward to that. So I'll be speaking with a gentleman from Baseball Reference. So I'm very excited about that. So there's also going to be a lot more shows coming through the pike. We recorded a lot over the summer and early fall that I just have to go through them. They're a lot harder to go through because I have to rewatch football games.
Yeah, it's sometimes now if you put me for an old football game from like the really early days, I'm very in tune.
Uh,
But if you have games that are a little bit older, okay, it's one thing. But some games I literally can't watch for
oh,
psychological reasons.
oh, okay. Well, no, I get that. I mean, like, I refuse to watch a certain Saints game where a penalty did not go their way against Minnesota.
Yeah, same way that I refuse to watch a certain Falcons game that most people usually associate them with.
Yes, I know which one you're talking about. So with that, wherever you are, wherever you may be, stay safe, everyone.